Our reporters there. Officials there insisting regular voters simply don't care. Let me bring in right now Doug Heye, CNN political commentator, Republican strategist, who is also, of course, a former communications director for the RNC. Angela Rye is here. She's CNN political commentator and former executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus. So, Doug, does that surprise you? Members of the RNC, they're gathering for their annual meeting. They don't think the Comey firing is a big deal. It doesn't need to come up in their meeting. Why is that?
Well, look, the RNC committee members are elected by their state parties. That means they're going to be loyal to the president, just as Democratic National Committee members were loyal to President Obama, come hell or high water, and we've certainly seen a lot of both over the past 100 days. So that shouldn't be a surprise at all. What they do want to talk about are jobs and the economy and health care. And I can tell you from the conversations I've had with members of Congress, any day that we're talking about James Comey or tax returns or some other crisis du jour is when we're taking as Republicans, taking our eye off the ball and not talking about those issues where we can connect with the voters and where we can affect real change for the voters. And that's a real problem.
Yeah, it's hard to keep your eye on the ball with all these tweets coming out, Doug. You'd be a magician if you could. Angela, on the flip side, I was talking about it with Bob Barr just a second ago. Some Democrats are not talking about impeachment. They think, clearly, they think very differently than the RNC members who are gathering. Is that going too far, too fast?
No, I can't. I don't see why it's not happened yet, why there's not been any proceedings, except for Republicans seem to be in control of the House, the Senate, and, of course, the White House. So that is, I think, the major thing that's standing in our way. To Doug's point, I think one of the reasons why we actually get along is because there's this threshold baseline standard called human decency, and we have violated that at this point. You brought up James Comey, and I would just say, here's this man who is hardly into a third of his 10-year term. And the reason why there were 10-year terms for FBI directors to begin with is because of this, this guy named J. Edgar Hoover. All of a sudden, it looks like J. Edgar Hoover has moved into the White House. And so, lo and behold, we are talking about impeachment on this side. That is the only thing we're talking about on this side.
Here's another thing to talk about. We just got this in. Sorry, I was looking down. The White House has released a letter from the president's, attorneys for the president, I think they're tax attorneys, involving business interests in Russia. Questions surrounding that obviously have been going on for forever. The president in an interview said that he'd actually sent a certified letter to Lindsey Graham about this. We're told that here's a little bit of what we know, that they released this promised letter, and here's what the letter says. With few exceptions, the tax returns do not reflect any income of any type from Russian sources or any debt owed by the president or the Trump organization. With few exceptions is obviously something that's going to make everyone's ears perk up. Doug, I can see your face right now. The exceptions listed: the 2013 Miss Universe pageant, we knew about that. The president sold a property in 2008 to a Florida property to a Russian billionaire. We did know about that. The final exceptions would be ordinary course sales of goods and services to Russian entities. Is this helping? Doug, does this help?
Possibly. And what I mean by that is if you want to distract from the James Comey news, which is obviously not great news for the White House, there's no shinier object for the press than the tax returns, which he's never going to release. But I think more importantly, Kate, is what President Trump tweeted about maybe you shouldn't even listen to my White House communications team at all. I can tell you as a former press staffer, I've been very fortunate that whenever I've made a dumb comment, and believe me, I've made plenty, my bosses have always backed me up to the hilt. Having the president undermine the credibility of his staff makes their job harder, not just today, but moving forward. This White House has had a lot of crises, but not a real true crisis yet. When that crisis hit, Sean Spicer and Sarah Huckabee Sanders, they need credibility in front of those reporters who are going to be gunning after them, and the president hurt them today. That's a real challenge for this White House. Real
quick, Angela, what's your advice to Sean Spicer today? Because the president has put him in an impossible position.
The only advice I could give him is just to watch Melissa rolling down that New York street today with that podium, and he needs to pray that he can break out of there as quickly as she has on the street with the podium rolling. I don't have any advice for Sean Spicer. It's a job he should have never taken. I've watched him on this network before he took this job, and he was far more credible than he is now. It's impossible to defend a liar. Your credibility means more than that, and I'm going to end where I started. Human decency is the threshold standard, and we violate it on all fronts with this president.
Sean Spicer was way on Navy Reserve duty, and he's coming back to a lot to deal with as he takes to the daily briefing today. Guys, thank you very much. Angela, Doug, always great to see you guys. Coming up for us, Steve.